Yeah.
Liberty and Coastal Carolina have been two of the most surprising teams in all of college football this season. So it is only natural that their matchup this Saturday is our game of the week. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, breaking down everything you need to know as the Flames travel to Conway, South Carolina to take on the 18th ranked Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, the site of College Game Day, the first time ever that College Game Day will be visiting Conway. So this is a very, very historic matchup, guys. I mean, you're looking at a 9-1 Liberty team and a 9-0 Coastal Carolina team, two teams that are off to some of their best starts in program history, probably having some of the best seasons in program history, two teams that are really relatively new to the FBS level of college football. So it is amazing to see such a great matchup between these two on Saturday. A matchup, again, that no one expected was going to be this good and this important just a few months ago before the season began. So we're here today to break down everything you need to know. We're going to talk history. We're going to talk offense. We're going to talk defense, a key storyline you need to watch, and at the end, who we have winning this big non-conference matchup on Saturday afternoon. So you heard us say just a second ago that Liberty and Coastal Carolina, they're relatively new to the FBS level. That means that prior to that, both these teams played at the FCS level of college football. And these two teams, let me tell you, they were rivals in the FCS. Big rivals. They met every year from 2003 to 2016, and they split those series. They split that series, Liberty winning 7 and Coastal Carolina winning 7. And you look at that, a lot of those games were relatively close. A lot of those had major FCS playoff implications as well. Most of the time, they were ranked versus ranked matchups within the FCS. So a lot of bad blood here, a rivalry renewed, if you will, and there are plenty of more games scheduled between these two in the following year. So that's a great backstory and really interesting and fitting that these two teams are powerhouses at the FCS and they're doing extremely well now at the next level. You look at Coastal Carolina right now. They are a 7-point favorite going into this game. And some may say that's a little high considering how well Liberty has been played. So we're going to touch more on that in a little bit. But Coastal Carolina, a 7-point favorite. That spread, again, as always, brought to you by BetNow.eu. Check that link down in our description below and use our promo code GRIDIRON over there. You get that 100% sign-up bonus and that $1,000 cash sign-up bonus as well. We've been using them all year. I know a lot of you guys have been using them all year. We've loved using them and partnering with them for over the past year and a half now. And really, I think they're the best place to go to place any bet you need. Football, basketball, baseball, whatever. BetNow.eu. Check them out right there down in the description. So let's go ahead. Let's talk stats here. Let's talk key players. Let's start with Liberty. They are the road team, and we always give preference to them. So let's talk Hugh Freeze and the Flames. Again, what a year they've had. Since Hugh Freeze took over at Liberty, he has started to make them relevant at the FBS level. And the funny thing is, last year they had a fantastic year. They made their first ever bowl game. They won that bowl game over Georgia Southern, and they were led by the great quarterback, Stephen Buckshot Calvert, one of the greatest quarterbacks in Liberty football history. Well, the major question was once he graduated, who was going to go under center for Liberty, and could they keep up their offensive success? In comes Malik Willis, the Auburn transfer quarterback, the perfect fit for Hugh Freeze. Malik Willis, a former SEC quarterback, now getting paired with a former SEC coach in Hugh Freeze, and he's thrived. Willis is Liberty's offense. He has over 2,800 total yards on the year, 30 total touchdowns on the year. He is, of course, the leading passer for the Flames, also the leading rusher, and he has just 4 interceptions in 2020. He takes great care of the football, and it should be noted that 3 of those 4 interceptions came in one game to North Carolina State, Liberty's lone loss of the year, and they still only lost that game by 1 point, their potential game-winning field goal getting blocked at the end of that one. The Flames are averaging 38.3 points per game, and they're extremely balanced. That's the scary thing with both of these teams. Again, we're touching on the Flames here. They're extremely balanced. If you take away the pass, they'll make up for it with the run and vice versa. The Flames are averaging 231.4 passing yards per game. They're averaging 252.1 rushing yards per game. So they're a little bit better on the ground than they are through the air. Willis, a main reason for that, but they also have Joshua Mack, who's the second leading rusher for the Flames this year, 692 yards and 4 touchdowns. He rushed for 100 yards or more in his first 3 games. Kind of got cold for a little bit, but then picked it back up, rushing for over 100 yards last week in Liberty's 45-0 shutout against UMass. So that's the major storyline to watch here, though, guys, and we'll touch more on it later when we talk defense. Malik Willis has been the key for Liberty this year. If you take him away, Liberty's offense has been taken away. Something that Coastal Carolina knows, something that North Carolina State knew when they defeated the Flames, and something we're going to have to watch very carefully throughout Saturday afternoon. Coastal Carolina, Jamie Chadwell, how about that? I mean, what an unbelievable job he has done with the Chanticleers over in Conway. And what a great job he has done recognizing the talent that he had in freshman quarterback Grayson McCall. You know, there were rumors and there was a chance that Fred Payton was going to be the starting quarterback for the Chanticleers this year. I mean, he had certainly had the most experience, but he decided to go with McCall, and it's paid off big time for him. The freshman quarterback throwing for over 1,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, just one interception. He's also shown a little bit of a dual threat ability, 365 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. Not nearly as good as Malik Willis, but he can do it when he needs to. The Chanticleers are averaging 38.7 points per game, and like Liberty, they're very balanced, 226.3 passing yards per game, 222 rushing yards per game. I would certainly say that the aerial attack for Coastal Carolina is maybe a little bit better than Liberty's, and something that the Chanticleers lean a little more heavily on than the Flames, but they can certainly make up for it on the ground if needed. The main player outside of Grayson McCall, and a major reason that Coastal Carolina's passing attack has thrived this year, is their junior wide receiver, and Javon Hiley, who has 682 yards and 8 touchdowns this year. He is the top wide receiver for Coastal Carolina. And my favorite stat about this is we said 682 yards, 8 touchdowns in this year alone. In Hiley's first 2 seasons with the program, he had just 699 reception yards and 5 touchdowns. In his first 2 years combined, those were the stats for him. He will get more, he will crack that yardage on Saturday. He only needs 17 more yards to tie it. He'll certainly get that against the Flames. He already has more touchdowns than he did in his first 2 years combined, and I credit a lot of that to Chadwell and certainly McCall, the leader of this team. And keep in mind, he is only a freshman. We go over to the defensive side of the ball here, and we're going to, again, go back to Liberty. And the funny thing is, if you look at Liberty's defensive stats from last year and this year, there's a drastic difference. Again, Liberty was a solid team in 2019. Don't get me wrong. But they finished 8-5. Solid team. Defensive stats, though, it wasn't their strong suit. Not too hot. They've drastically improved this year. They're allowing just 301.2 yards per game. And if you've been here for a while, you know that we think you're doing a pretty dang good job if you're holding teams to 300 yards per game or less, on average. So Liberty only being 1.2 yards above that, it's pretty dang good. 171.6 passing yards per game they're allowing, 129.6 rushing yards per game they're allowing. And this Flames team, guys, they're a little bit of a ball hawk here. They've played 10 games. They've forced 15 turnovers in those games. And that's going to be a key in this one that we'll talk about later is they've got to be able to win the turnover battle on the road against a quarterback in Grayson McCall that, again, rarely turns the football over. So 15 turnovers for the Flames. Can they win the turnover battle this time around like they have for the majority of the year? Something you're going to keep your eye on. Coastal Carolina, they're allowing 16.8 points per game, not too shabby, and 322.2 total yards per game. So again, not too bad there either. A little bit worse in that statistic than Liberty, but not that big a difference. The key number I want to look at for Coastal Carolina, though, is the rushing yards per game they're allowing. Again, you've got 2 great quarterbacks here between Malik Willis and Grayson McCall, but the style of play, I think, for both is a little bit different. I think with Liberty, you're going to see more of a ground and pound type game. Willis can certainly air it out, but his dual threat ability is very difficult for defenses to stop. They've got Joshua Mack, obviously, in that backfield. So that RPO type offense that Hugh Freeze is running up there at Liberty is very, very difficult to stop. Coastal Carolina, they air it out a little bit more. And the number I'm looking at here for the Chanticleers is they allow 140.3 rushing yards per game. 140.3 rushing yards per game. Now, that's not a horrible mark. There are a lot of teams out there that have a worse mark than that. But the question is, can they hold Liberty to around that mark? Can they hold Liberty, again, a team that is averaging, 252 rushing yards per game? Can they hold them to over 100 yards less than their season average? If they're unable to do that and they allow the Flames to run rampant on them, they're not going to be able to win this game, one of the biggest games in program history. So the rushing yards per game is the key number I'm looking at here. You cannot allow Willis and Mack to just have a field day on your home turf. Another thing I look at here for Coastal Carolina, 15 turnovers for Liberty, 17 forced turnovers for Coastal Carolina. So again, who wins that turnover battle? Both teams have been very, very good in forcing turnovers this year. Better in the turnover margin and the positive when it comes to the turnover margin. Which one wins that turnover battle on Saturday? Even if it's just one turnover, it could be enough to win the game. And they're going to need that in this one. So we go through the offense, we go through the defense, and I want to look at the one key storyline. Usually we break down each team and say, what are the keys to the game for each? I'm looking at one storyline that's the key for both teams. And I think whoever can win this storyline, they win the game. So it's the major key and the major thing that maybe a lot of people aren't talking about. Sure, turnovers, huge deal. We talked about that. But who wins this game in the trenches, and who does a better job of protecting / pressuring the quarterback? Those are the numbers you need to watch out for. Let's break them down. Liberty, the Flames, they've allowed 21 sacks this year. That's not all that bad. 21 sacks through 10 games, you're allowing about 2.1, about 2 sacks per game. Not horrible. Coastal Carolina, though, we've mentioned time and time again, not only do they have arguably the best front seven in the Sun Belt, but they maybe have one of the best front sevens in the entire country. And the Chanticleers have 31 sacks on the year. They have racked up 31 sacks this year, and that includes 12 sacks in their last 3 games. They're averaging they're averaging 4 sacks per game in their last 3. They're getting hot, and can they go up against a Liberty offensive line that's been decent, not great, but decent this year, and create pressure on Malik Willis? Liberty, on the other hand, they have 26 sacks on the year, so they've dialed up the pressure themselves. Coastal Carolina, though, done a great job of protecting Grayson McCall. That's huge when you've got a freshman quarterback, and he's doing great. He's doing great because he has protection. He has time in the pocket. Coastal Carolina has allowed just 10 sacks all year. They've played 9 games. 9 games, they've allowed just 10 sacks. So I look at this. Really, it's a bigger key for Liberty. If Malik Willis has time in the pocket to throw, if Malik Willis has great blocking for the chance for him to extend plays with his legs, to run and pick up those first downs, or maybe it's a designed run from great blocking up front, Liberty can win this game. If they do not, if Coastal Carolina's front seven is too much for Liberty's offensive line to handle, then Liberty simply does not stand a chance. And I want to tell you what happened in Liberty's lone loss this year against North Carolina State. Against NC State, Liberty, again, their only loss, where they lost 15-14. Malik Willis was sacked 3 times by the Wolfpack. North Carolina State had 8 tackles for a loss. North Carolina State had 7 quarterback hurries. They forced 3 interceptions off of Willis, and they had a safety in that game as well. A safety that, again, was crucial in a 1-point victory for the Wolfpack. So you look at how well Liberty's played all year long, but in the one game that they lost, their offensive line and their protection and the decision-making from Malik Willis was not good. And they lost. So I look at that. If that happens again, Coastal wins. No doubt about it. And Coastal's front seven maybe has the potential to be better than the front seven that Liberty faced against NC State. That's the key storyline you need to watch. who wins the battle in the trenches. Turnovers, quarterback hurries, and protection. That's the key. And when you break it all down, guys, when you break it all down, I'm going with Coastal Carolina that will have the edge in both of those categories. Both those categories, which means we've got Coastal Carolina winning the game on Saturday. We're picking the Chanticleers. Look, this is going to be, again, we said it in our Week 14 predictions video, a great battle between great quarterbacks. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better. The dual threat quarterback in Malik Willis, the more pocket passer quarterback in Grayson McCall. Again, an old rivalry here that no one expected to be a must-see game this late in the year. Yet, here we are. It's the game of the week. Great quarterback battle, but in the end, it's going to be the defense that makes the difference in this one, and I'm going with Coastal Carolina. They have only won one game by one possession. That was that 3-point victory on the road against Louisiana that I think really opened everybody's eyes and said, hey, this Coastal team is legit. They're for real, and it's time to start taking them seriously. Outside of that, Coastal Carolina has won every other game by double digits, by at least 10 points. They've dominated. They don't play down to their opponents. They come out, they play their style of football. They force you to play their style of football, and if you don't, you lose. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do on Saturday. I'm not saying that this is going to be a blowout. I would not be surprised in the slightest if this is the second one-possession game that Coastal Carolina wins this year. But the Chanticleers are going to get the job done at home. Home field advantage plays a role. The college game day hype, a historical moment for this program, plays a major role, and that defense, certainly where I believe Coastal Carolina has the edge, especially up front, plays a major role. And the Chanticleers will improve to 10-0 in 2020, while Liberty will end the season at 9-2 before they get what I would hope to be a very favorable bowl destination, because we know that they certainly deserve it. But a great game coming your way, Conway, South Carolina, on Saturday afternoon, site of College Game Day. We've got the Chanticleers winning a fun one against Hugh Freeze and the Liberty Flames. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. Share our videos. It's how we continue to grow and spread the college football word. Also, make sure to check out everything down in our description below. We've got our weekly newsletter over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. We've got our expert picks, against the spread picks for all of our Week 14 games. Also over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. We have our Patreon account for exclusive content. We've got the BetNow links that I promise you do not want to miss. All of those things right down there, down in the description for you, the diehard college football fan. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.